Right. Yeah, we're recording. We are all good. So, I'd like to start by introducing myself. My name is Christina Costa, and I'm a Reiki teacher and practitioner based in Brentwood in Essex. I'm here with Paul Connolly. So, Paul, you are a best-selling author, and your life story is the basis for the upcoming feature film Big Boys Don't Cry, which is a harrowing new film about your childhood really suffering abuse in a children's home. And then your later collaboration with the police to bring the abusers to justice. So I've just read Not Normal, which is your third and what you call your most detailed book. And I have to admit, I found it deeply shocking. But overall, I've been left with this sense of deep admiration for you and for how much you've turned your life around. So I'd like to ask you about your life in the present day. You know, the film really focuses on your past, but I'd like to talk about your life now, and kind of the focus of your work and how it's changed for you.
Yeah, where do I start? Somebody asked you about your life, you don't know where to start. Most people start with work. So I run my own sports injury clinic now, and a lot of stuff I do can be explained with regards to getting people out of pain and helping people. A lot of it can't be explained. You know, you can explain a lot through science, and then there's all the other stuff. So yeah, I've got waiting lists for people to come and see me across the board, from babies right up to a 88-year-old lady I'm with at the moment. So yeah, I've got waiting lists, and it's very rewarding, the stuff I do. Some of it, like I said, is easy to explain through obviously science and sports science injuries and the sport and the work I do. But there's other stuff that is just freaky and I can't explain it. So that's I've got 2 boys, and got a lovely home, and the wife and everything. So yeah, everything's everything's lovely. Yeah, so I often use this analogy when people ask me my life now. You ever watch the movie Oliver Twist, when he's living in the slums and he's with Fagin and all that, and then at the end of the movie he wakes up in these whitewashed streets and they're all singing up, and he's in like this heaven. And look out where I live now, it's sort of like that. It's a massive transformation from where I come from. So yeah, it's lovely. Can't complain. Nobody listens to you, even if you
do. Thanks so much. I think you're being quite humble about your about your current work, and I think it might be nice for you to just talk about an example. I know you talked about you're working with an Olympic athlete. Is that right?
I've worked with quite a few Olympic athletes, yeah, and quite a few celebrities, and people love it when you drop names. Some I can mention, some I'm not allowed to mention because you have to sign a privacy disclosure. But I worked in LA for 2 years with quite a lot of big Hollywood stars. I can mention some, and some I can't. But they're just people like all of us. They're no different. They're probably a bit more screwed up than most of us. But I've got like a young lad at the moment with a rare form of dwarfism, which Great Ormond Street couldn't get him out of pain, and I've got him out of pain, and I'm rebuilding his body in the gym, and his mum calls me her angel. I've got an 84-year-old woman who I've just got out of pain after a hip replacement. I've got, oh my God, stories all day long that I can tell you, because I do about 12 clients a day, and it's quite grueling. I go from 10 to 10. But, I love what I do, so I sort of thrive on it. And you have to balance it a bit, of course. But it all turned around about 10 years ago, to be fair, when I got very ill myself from overworking. I was doing like a 90-hour week. I was making the movie. I was giving evidence in the government historical child abuse case. I was writing this book with Shannon Kai, Not Normal, she's Jay Goody's deathbed ghostwriter. She was a very hard-bitten journalist. And then I was doing 60 hours a week in my clinic. So I literally became very ill and was rushed to hospital with this disease. They call it the silent killer. It kills about 300 people a year. It's called endocarditis, and it's an infection that you can get from a dentist, but the dentist will deny that, of course. But you're predisposed to it if you have any heart issues. So at 49, I found out I had a leaky heart valve that I was born with, and this is after having 84 amateur fights and being a first personal trainer in the city. back in '86 and running the London Marathon, and then apparently I've got something wrong with my heart. So, but what happened was when they took me into hospital after weeks of being ill, they said that to the wife and the kids to come up and say goodbye. They said, I won't be there in the morning, because if you're 60% or more infected with this disease, you have organ failure and death. So they said I would be dead by the morning, but I've been nearly dead lots of times, and I keep disappointing them. So what happened was, halfway through the night in Basildon Hospital, I was on a heart ward there. A big black man appeared at the side of my bed. Now everyone who's not spiritual will go, oh my God, what a wally. Right, but he's as real as you were, okay? And I wasn't particularly spiritual back then, to be fair. I dabbled, but I wasn't, you know me, when you ask me loads of questions, I wasn't a particularly spiritual person. And he was this huge black man. And he said to me, do you mind if I hold your hand and say some comforting words to you? And his exact words were, this was 10 years ago, do you mind if I hold your hand and say some comforting words to you? And all I remember was this big, handsome black man at the side of my bed. So I said, yeah. And he held my hand and he started saying these words. And I was really comforted. I felt like all the fear and all the pain and everything that was going, it just disappeared. And it was just like, wow, this is lovely. So I was quite happy, I've gone from being sort of really in pain and really, anyway, in the morning I was there and they was all around the bed going, he's not supposed to be here, he's alive. And I was on a drip in that hospital for 5 weeks fighting the infection, and won, obviously. And at that time I went down into the church to thank this big black priest. I asked everyone who he was and where he was, and nobody had ever heard of him. He didn't exist. But ever since then, my whole work life transformed. I went from being this hard-bitten boxing coach and this PT and this boot camp guy who just used to kick his clients up the arse and swear at them if they didn't work hard enough, to somebody who's just getting everyone who comes anywhere near them out of pain. And it's remarkable. And somebody told me it's called a walk-in. I don't know what it was, to be honest with you. I've never even heard of a walk-in. I didn't know what it was. But my life has transformed since then in a massive way. And years ago, when I was a gangster running around with a gun down the back of my trousers, a couple of little I was on a tube train, this is interesting, in Bethnal Green, and I was with two big black guys and we were going off up to no good. And I was this violent, aggressive young man, gangster on the door, very angry. And this little Irish fella said to me on the train, so you're the chosen one, are you? And they started laughing at him. He said, oh, you're the chosen one. And then he's like, most people wouldn't even talk to us, they'd avoid us if they saw us. And I was like, all my mates were laughing, and we were like big, huge men, and nasty men, horrible men, people you would avoid. And he decided to come straight up to me and said, mark my words, one day you're going to be a great healer. He said, not now. He said, you're a violent, aggressive man. He said, do you like my accent? He said, mark my words, you're going to be a great healer. And I was like, yeah, go away. Anyway, they were all laughing, and I was sort of laughing because he said to me, and in Ireland, they call the seventh son of the seventh son the chosen one. And I am the seventh son of the seventh one. Seventh son of the seventh son. So I sort of was laughing, but I also sort of knew what he meant. And here we are at 58, and what he predicted come true in a funny way. It's like, it's remarkable how things turn out.
Absolutely. So I mean, I think it's really good to reflect on your past and try and pinpoint moments of transformation. And that's what you just said. You used the word transformation. So it sounds like 10 years ago was when your spiritual journey perhaps began.
And I've had some other things happen to me since then, which I couldn't explain, so, and if you tell people, they just go, oh, don't be daft, but yeah, sorry.
So no, it's all fascinating. And so obviously my profession is Reiki. I'm really interested in Reiki. Was it around that time that Reiki came into your life?
Yeah, I'd done the Reiki 1 and I did the Reiki 2, and first I read a book about self-healing, and then everything I was reading pointed me to Reiki for self-healing. And then I sort of had this little handbook which was showing me all the hand movements and what to do, and I used to go to bed and try and do stuff on myself. And then I went and did the Reiki 1, and then I've done the Reiki 2, and I want to do the Masters, but I just haven't really got round to it. And then, but I'm one of these people that I just don't stick with one thing. I like to look at everything and take stuff from everywhere. but I just kept getting drawn to the Reiki because there's something else called a Marconi or something that everyone keeps talking about. And, you know, I just think it's either in you or it's not. And if, you know, there's lots of people who heal with Reiki, but lots of people who heal without it, don't they? But I found Reiki's really worked for me.
I'm so glad to hear that. I believe that everyone can learn to heal. It's not a special gift. It is possible to learn Reiki, but you're quite right that there are some people who naturally are born healers.
Yeah.
And in fact, there are lots of different healing modalities. I think there are something like 80 different energy healing modalities. So Reiki is not the only method, but it is for me one that's very, it's fairly simple and it's structured and it's effective, which is why I think that's why it was something that I was drawn to as well, because I didn't even know what a chakra was before I learned Reiki. I was not in that world either.
No.
So I can empathize.
Go on, sorry. No, you go.
So in your book, you do mention Reiki, and I was really happy there was like a few lines at the end of your book, not normal. And I have a question, because in your book, you described that when you first heard about Reiki and you heard about the story of the founder, Mikao Usui, in your own words, you said it sounded unlikely, to say the least. And then in the book, it says that you chatted to some people who'd done it and you decided to sign up for a level 1 course. So I'm just very curious. What was it that they said to you that changed your mind?
What I did was I went to a few people for Reiki treatment on myself, and then I started seeing colours and things like that. And I went, oh, this is interesting. Why am I seeing these colours? And then I couldn't explain the colours. And then I started having I just became more conscious and more self-aware. And then it just drew me more to it. And it was just, I think it was the fact that I was being treated, or if you call it treatment, I was having Reiki done to me. And it drew me to think, you know, there must be something in this, because I was seeing these like these lava lamps that go all crazy. I was seeing all of that. And I was like, what is this? I've never seen this before. And I don't like not being able to explain anything. You know, I like to find out what's going on. So it just drew me further and further and further into it. You know?
So that's interesting. So it sounds like for you needed to experience Reiki before you could fully commit to learning it. And yeah,
I'm you know, I like evidence, and you know, this is probably why you know, everyone starts off skeptical, don't they? And I think you just need to, it's all our own journey. And I've always been very good with the emotional intelligence, so I just thought there's definitely more to us than just, you know, just the brain and the body and the bones. We are far more powerful than that, obviously. I mean, even science can prove that, you know. So, yeah, it's interesting. But what another thing was, I kept having these experiences. I had my blinds behind you lit up one night, like Tinkerbell, and they all went, like the whole room lit up, and then it went dark. And then I've had quite a few experiences that I couldn't explain. I've had, like, you know, and when you tell people, they go, well, you were asleep, you were dreaming, you know, things like that. When I go to Ireland, they mob me in these little villages where my family come from, and they do an earthworm trick. I don't know if you know about the seventh son of the seventh son, and they if you put the earthworm in your hand, the true seventh son of the seventh son, the earthworm dies, and it stops moving. So it's the party trick in the pub, and the earthworm stops moving with me, and they all go crazy. And then they ask me to close my eyes and think of initials, and whatever initials I give them, they go and bet on their horses that day, and they invariably win. So there's all crazy stuff that we don't understand. You know, I don't understand half of it. But in Ireland, they all want to touch me, because the true seventh son of the seventh son is lucky and charmed and is supposed to be able to heal. That's the myth. So as soon as the earthworm dies in your hand, then everyone's buying you drinks in the pub. So there's all this stuff that you sort of think is your destiny, but at the same time, like you say, anybody can heal. You just have to tune into it. Anybody, you know, I you know, when I work on trigger points, when I'm doing my actual job, if I actually concentrate and try and put some loving energy into those trigger points, people's pain drops so much quicker than if I'm just doing it without thinking about it, you know. So it's remarkable. Like, the results are remarkable with Reiki.
So do you think then, because it sounds like you have a bit of a combination, you have the Reiki training that you received, and you have obviously, you're obviously a very spiritual person and you've had spiritual experiences in your life. Um, can you kind of pinpoint the difference? Maybe, I think your work is a good example to use. Can you pinpoint the difference before you learned Reiki and after? Um,
So a really good example is a girl that came to me very recently. She was on, I won't say her name. She's obviously, she's had a very troubled past herself. And I get a lot of people like that drawn to me because of my past. And she was like, I'm on 13 different types of meds. I'm on a heavy duty antidepressants. And the hospital told me I'm going to be in a wheelchair by the time, within a year. Well, she wrote me a lovely review on Google. She's off all her drugs. She's perfect. Her back's perfectly strong and fit now, and she predominantly had Reiki from me. Not a lot of sports injury stuff. It was always, and the Reiki almost, because a lot of her problems were in her head as well as physiological. She had a lot of psychological problems. And I'm a qualified life coach, right? So I could say to her, right, I'll give you hypnotherapy, I'll do NLP, I'll do all these things that I've learned on you to help you with your psychological problems, but they wouldn't work because for her to regress, take her back into horrible places, the Reiki just seemed to allow her to release all that emotional turmoil without the regression, without the damaging regression that hypnotherapy and psychotherapy and NLP does to people. And it was remarkable. Her results were remarkable. She's off all her meds. She's off her antidepressants. She's not. Her back is strong. I built her back in the gym, and she initially came to me, and I was treating her through sports massage and trigger point, and it was having some of a result. And then one day she said, "Oh, I'd really like to try the Reiki," and oh my God, the results were remarkable. Psychologically, physiologically, everything changed for her, and it literally changed around within 1 or 2 treatments. And then, it's just, and I found that as much as she had physiological problems, she also had a lot of psychological ones. And the Reiki just basically allowed her to release a lot of that emotional baggage without doing all the damaging regression that I think hypnotherapy can do. It can take people back where they don't want to go. And she's like a different person. And she wrote this review, and it's basically, she said it can't be explained, and I'll forever be in debt. And that was Reiki. That wasn't, it was remarkable. And yet for other people, I use other methods. I just tune into people, don't you? And you just know what to do. You don't have to think about it.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. I thank you so much for sharing that story, and I totally agree. I think everybody is individual, so it's difficult to say. In fact, impossible to say, do this. This will definitely help you. I think whereas Reiki might work for one person, hypnotherapy might be working for someone else. I do know some wonderful hypnotherapists, so I don't think it's all bad. I think it's, as you say, tuning into the person and finding what works for them.
No, I just think for her, not everyone, but for her personally, that wouldn't have worked because she had so much, she was already at such a low ebb. And the Reiki I could actually see her becoming her energy lifting, and I could actually see that her glowing, and so many things happen. And when I do Reiki now in my studio, I've got shutters that go up, and it's got Reiki on, and the shutters go up, and the incense sticks, and all the music comes on, and the whole atmosphere in the room changes. It changes because it's a gym or it's a sports injury clinic, and it changes into something instantly the minute I do these certain things in the room. I've got shutters that black the room out. The salt lamp goes on. I do everything, and that mindset. Then the right sounds go on, and the right smells come, and the lemongrass comes out, and the whole thing changes. It changes into a totally different situation. And this woman just really, really, like, I've never seen such remarkable results with somebody in such a short period of time.
Wow. And I think that's what's great about Reiki, though, is that a person doesn't have to say anything. That's what's nice. If they don't want to speak, if they don't want to share what's going on with them, as a practitioner, you don't have to ask some questions. You don't need to know. And then
sometimes you also know without them saying it. I know what's wrong with her. I know I had people that come in and they don't tell me what their problems are, but I just know without them telling me. I know what the problem is. And sometimes I've told them, they go, how do you know that was the problem? Oh, it was your father, he was an alcoholic. How did you know? I don't know how I knew, I just knew. You know, whatever it is. But a really good story is my dog. My wife's a cynic. She's very cynical about it. And twice my dog's become ill, and twice I've healed him with Reiki. And she's now like, oh, I'm never going to say anything bad about Reiki ever again because she adores this dog, right? But one Saturday night I came in from work and the dog was shaking under the table, trembling under the table, and he was unwell. And she phoned the vet, and the vet said, yeah, come out, like it's 120 quid before you even turn up, right? So he was under the table. So I crawled under the table with him, and he sort of, my hands went to his stomach, and he was shaking, and you can just see he was unwell. And when I was like working on his stomach and creating all this heat and all this energy around his stomach, he closed his paws around my hands and pulled my hand into his stomach, and he fell asleep. And then he was really quite emotional, you know. And then when he fell asleep, I worked on him for about 20 minutes. And when he fell asleep, I put him in his bed. And I said, just leave him. Hopefully he'll be all right in the morning. Well, he come flying out of bed and he had this mad half hour, like a puppy again. and he was fine, instantly fine. And twice that's happened. And then she always used to go, oh, Reiki nonsense. And now she's like, she's never said that since. She's like, no, I'd never say that again. Because she's obsessed with the dog. Trust me, I'd go before the dog does.
Well, I think animal Reiki is a really fantastic practice, because humans, in a way, they can be, you know, I don't want to say boring, but they lie down, so nothing really happens. But when you're working with an animal, you have to keep your eyes open, you have to watch for the body language of the animal. And whereas a human would have thoughts, animals they sense things. You know, a dog thinks, well, hey, it's morning, yeah, I'm going to go for a walk, yeah, I've got food. So
the dog's instinctive. I mean, you know, I've never had a human grasp my hands and pull my hands where they need to go. You know, the dog did. The dog pulled my hands down to his stomach. They were going there anyway, but he guided me with his own paws.
Yeah,
it's crazy, right? Because dogs are instinctive. And I think healing's instinctive, and it's you don't think about it, do you? You don't have to think about it. That's what makes it so easy. It's not taxing at all.
Perhaps it's easy for you. I think quite a few people struggle with their mind. Yeah. Is this working? Is this not working? What is this energy? What's going on? And they can actually find their mind being blown a little bit. So I think from what conversations we've had, you're very intuitive. So I think be grateful for that.
I think people are only intuitive if they accept it. Don't question it. I don't see the reason to question anything that works. If it works, it works. I don't need to know why. I don't need to know how. I don't need to question it. I only question things that don't work to find out why they don't work. But if they work, I don't need to ask why they work. And I think that people that struggle with it is because they're too busy questioning it. Why don't you just accept that it works?
I completely agree. Wow, thank you. I think that's a wonderful place to kind of conclude. I just wanted to ask you very quickly, so just briefly, I know you do a lot of charity work, and the charity Kids Inspire is on the back cover of your book, Not Normal. Would you just like to explain a little bit about that? And
yeah, there's a lady called Sue Bell who is one of the founders of that, and she's a very spiritual lady. She does all sorts. All of their work starts from a spiritual premise with the kids. And she's one of the founders, and they're always trying to raise money. They deal with the worst abused kids in Essex, and they do amazing work, and they're always, you know, needing money. They sort of get government money, but not much, because they have to work with kids for the government as well. And they are remarkable what they do. I work with a few charities, but this is a proper charity. They, you know, I've worked with big charities in London where I've raised 200 grand, and I found out the CEO earns 200 grand a year. Well, this charity, most of them work 6 days a week and get paid for 4. So they're proper. It's a proper charity. And some of the stories are heartbreaking, you know, with the children. And they're just, but what I liked about them is not just that their intentions are wonderful. It's the fact that the founders are, she does all sorts of spiritual stuff with kids. And although they're doing lots of like counselling, it comes from a spiritual like base. They do Reiki, they do all sorts. They have all different people coming in and working with the children. So it's amazing. And also work with a charity called If Only, who work with adults that were abused as children. And that's Stacey Solomon's stepmom, Karen, and they've set that up recently. I've just helped them set that up and get charitable status. So I'm working with real charities as opposed to posh ones.
Brilliant.
Let's keep it friendly.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Paul. It's been really great chatting to you about life and Reiki.
We finally got it done.
We did, yeah. So, well, best of luck with everything, and we'll speak again soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.